I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, and for whatever I did the Stations of the Cross when I was in grade school, and that was my first stage experience. And for whatever reason, when I was in grade school, I had this notion that when I got to high school, I would be in the drama club, even though I didn't know why. I really wanted to be a cartoonist. I was a big comic book fan, and that's what I wanted to do. But for whatever reason, I wanted to be in plays, and I feel like a lot of showbiz stories, of course, it was almost by accident, because I had this aspiration. I wanted to be in the plays, and I had a lot of friends who were in the band and were in the plays, and I knew the auditions were coming for The Music Man, but I forgot. And I remember distinctly, I was going to a baseball card show with my father, and we were driving by the high school, and I saw people milling about, and I remember going, oh, I think those auditions were today. And oh, well, I guess I'm going to go get Bobby Shantz's autograph. And then one of my friends who was in the show dropped out, and they said, you should just come with us to rehearsal. They may just put you in it. And sure enough, that's what they did. I showed up when I was salesman number whatever in Music Man, and I had one line, this hill. That's all I had to say in the train scene. But that was pretty much it. I did that, and then I was hooked. I just wanted to stay in it, and I actually got my first professional acting job that following summer. That I auditioned for traveling children's theater for the city of Philadelphia. It was through the Archdiocese. It was through the Office of Youth and Young Adults. And so at 15, I was going down to 13th and Clover every day from Northeast Philadelphia. I would get on the 20 bus and take the Market Frankford line to 13th Street. And I would go to 13th and Clover, which is now, they're building something there. We would get in a van, and I would go into North Philly and West Philly and all over the city and do traveling children's theater. And that was sort of where I would say, I didn't know it at the time, but that was where the seeds of the communicative nature of theater were being planted in me, that I could go into these communities where I was, me and the guy who drove our van were the only white guys for 15 blocks. And I could go into these places where I was the minority. And suddenly communication, once I put, we were doing Hansel and Gretel, and I was playing a goofy old man, and as soon as I put on those plaid shorts and hiked them up and put on the goofy glasses, it didn't matter that I was the only white guy in the room. It just mattered that I was funny. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was not only was I getting to get out of my entirely white blue collar neighborhood in Northeast Philadelphia, and being integrated with a different economic class and different, a different race. It suddenly seemed that once the play started, once the show started, then none of that really mattered. All that mattered was, were you funny? And all that mattered was the story any good? Was the show any good? And so I think that again, I didn't know it at the time. At the time, I was just happy to get $50 a week to be in a play. And so then, that was pretty much that. I think that somewhere in me that registered as I was interested in the fact that we could communicate like that. And I would go back to my, same class, same race, neighborhood, and and it felt like that was something missing for me, that I didn't have that. And so when I went to college, I went to, Run More Run is a story about a young man named Dean Williams who lives in a rural North Carolina town. And he has very few prospects. He has very few hopes. He lives with a single mother. We don't know what's happened to his father, but his father's not in the picture. And, he lives on the outskirts of the American dream and the outskirts of the American experience. And maybe it's not even fair to say American experience, because by definition, what is that? I don't know. But certainly he lives on the outskirts of whatever we would consider a normal life. He's poor, and he is approached by a very rich white man in town for profit, for a job and a raise and some money, to seduce and sleep with a rich black man in town, who the rich white man wants his land, and with very few prospects available to him, Dean decides to do it. And I didn't mention, but he is gay, and so he's not appalled by the idea. In fact, that's why the rich man picks him, because he's perfect. And so Dean sets about trying to seduce this black man and find a way to get him in bed, as he's been instructed. And in the course of doing so, of course, he has his world opened up to him, to an experience, into a person that he's never met before, a kind of person he's never met before, and he's cared for in a way that he's never been cared for. And so, despite the fact he's been hired to really betray this man, he finds himself quietly finding more freedom than money or position could ever give him. I think the play is really about identity, and I think it's about freedom in a way, and how do we achieve that kind of freedom that we want to find in our lives, and who defines us. I mean, that's why I say identity, but what are the things that define us? I said American experience, and I think I take that back, because in a way we are constantly struggling with identity in this country, and who's a real American, and what's the real experience. And it's a fantastic time to be doing the play, and when you have a real debate in this country where there are groups of people that say they want to take their country back. And so the logical question from that is, take it back from who? And so I think there's a sense of who has ownership of the American dream, and what is that? And I think Dean is, in many ways, he's a conduit for that conversation. He's who speaks for this man, who speaks for this poor kid in a rural town that nobody cares about, and he tries to enact something to free himself of the constraints of this world, and in doing so damns himself further. And then coupled with that is also just the immediacy of any kind of romance, that these two people from vastly different experiences, a rich black man who's gone out of this town and educated himself at Morehouse College and has come back to run his family business, has education, has intelligence, has money, and this poor white kid who is a high school dropout and works in a spinning machine factory and has no money and scrapes by to survive. These two people come together and are happy with each other, and their lives feel a little bit more fulfilled with each other. And so coupled with this incredible, coupled with this notion of freedom and identity is also just a love story about what is forbidden love, what is the thing that we can't have, and Dean suffers very harshly the sort of, is it better to have loved and lost or never have loved at all? I just felt like there's this whole experience that doesn't really matter. It doesn't move the needle of the economy. It doesn't move the needle of cultural interest. And yet, these are the people that constitute who we are. These are the people that make up the world we live in. And so, I think when I read David Mamet, and I think when I read Sam Shepard, and I think when I read Tracy Letts, and I think when I read Terrell Alvin McCraney, I think I'm reading experiences that are not my own, that I don't relate to from my own upbringing, but I somehow feel like I understand, and I feel like if great plays ask great questions, then where better to ask great questions from than the point of view of the people that we as a society have no interest in hearing from. I somehow feel like that matters. And the fact that Run, Warner, Run deals with race and sex in such a visceral way, in such a real way, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people in our country don't want to have a real conversation about race, and they don't want to have a real conversation about sex.
Oh, run, run, Mona, run, right, ain't